Hi everybody, welcome to episode 10 of the Camera Shake podcast. As you can see, we're not in lockdown anymore, so this isn't the podcast coming out of lockdown straight into your eardrums any longer, because given the most recent easing of lockdown rules in the United Kingdom, we can now be in the same room together. So interesting enough, that was what we planned all along, wasn't it?
It was indeed, and this is going to take a little bit getting used to.
Yeah.
I'm used to looking at my Mac screen, and now I've got to look directly at you.
Yes.
Not quite the same. This is far more enjoyable already.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a whole bunch of stuff lined up for today, so that should be interesting. But first, let's talk about what it took us to actually get to this point.
Well, what's the time? Yeah, several hours is what it took. It was good, man. I mean, we had some ideas of what we wanted to do with this, right, and how we wanted it to look, but we thought we'd just jump into the room and see what kind of happens. So you probably recognise some of the items behind me here. This looks, it's very similar to what I've been filming behind. So, what's this, setup number 4 for today for us to work out? Something like that. It's about the fourth one we've gone through. We like it, so we've got 3 cameras set up. We've got the main camera here that's on both of us, and then we've got camera number 2 and
camera number 3 right there.
Hello. And above us we've got my 300D with the light dome on, which is as we know, we love the light that this produces. Behind you we've got a little accent light. Behind me we've got a little accent light as well. And we just got our regular podcast type mics going on. It's awesome, man. Yeah.
So really, it took us, all in, it took us 6 months to get to this point, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, I guess it did.
From the initial idea of starting a podcast to being forced to sort of start it in lockdown. Well, not being forced, but it was a good opportunity to actually get started with it, and then finding a sort of technical solution to do it remotely and have guests on the show also remotely, to now finally getting to the point where we sort of envisioned it to be from the very beginning. Yeah, it's quite, I think it's quite remarkable, really.
It is, and I hadn't even realised it had been that long.
Yeah, it's been at least 6 months.
The last 12 weeks or so that we've been, actually getting these out has flown by.
Yeah, it's been nuts. I mean, the fact that this is the 10th episode, that's hard to believe, really.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think we'll hit 100 episodes before we know it now.
Next week.
Somewhere in the future. But, that's cool, man. Glad you're here.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's actually interesting to sit opposite another human being. Although we did do a photo shoot last week together, which was kind of the first real live photo shoot in 3 months. I think I'd done some work before during lockdown, but that was sort of just me, myself, and I in a huge building or in a big site with no other people around. So last week's photo shoot was sort of a promotional campaign for instrumental lessons, if you want, where we had a number of different models using different instruments. And that felt good. That felt good being in a room with different people and actually, going through the motions of what a more or less normal photo shoot would be like, given that there were social distancing, social distancing was in place at the shoot, but nevertheless, it kind of felt good.
It reminded me of why you do photography and videography in the first place.
Right.
It's great to do things on your own, and there are certain times where that's necessary and what you want to do, but really you want to be doing it with someone else, other people, and shooting those models or whoever it is, or whichever subject you're going on.
It also reminded me why I'm not a landscape photographer, because I actually like photographing people. There's just something about that which I personally find really fun. I know a lot of people find, value in sitting in nature and waiting for something to happen, wildlife photographers or something. It's a really solitary kind of game, wildlife photography. Where you wait, you sit in a hideout and you wait forever for I don't know, a bird or something to come along. And I think that's great if that's what you're into, sort of thing, you know. But for me personally, I love shooting portraits because I like the whole interaction with people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, not having been able to do that for 3 months, that I think was one of the toughest parts of the whole lockdown thing for me.
And what worries me most about all of that is that you get so used to it, you almost start not to miss it.
Yeah.
And it's only when you go back into it, you go, oh, God, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
This is fun. I mean, that day flew by.
Yeah, it was
absolutely flew.
Yeah, there was a whole day, like a full day shoot, and that went like nothing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, and you know, things are easing up again. I think
For now,
yeah, you never know where that's going.
Yeah,
but at least for now, to enjoy it while it lasts, I think. Yeah, so I mean, we had time to kind of change the location, come back to this place, and set things up, and I really quite enjoy it. It's cool.
It's fun to the point where I'm leaving this like this. This is going to be my, you know, one half of my living room now from the foreseeable future.
Yeah, but kids are going to be glad that they have their dining room back.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
That's a plus point.
But you know, who knows? It could be a few weeks before we're having to do it remotely again.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. Second wave and all that, but let's not think about that.
Yeah, and plus, you know, we're still planning on having lots of guests on. You know, and there'll still be a lot of kind of remote interviewing going on. So, you know, it's not. I think the fact that we've already done it for 9 episodes, it kind of, you know, gives us a bit of a head start, really. So
yeah, true.
Yeah,
true.
So it's cool. There should be interesting things to come.
Definitely,
I should say.
Definitely.
I was trying to figure out which camera to look at. This is really quite as different from what I'm used to when it comes to podcasting. Yeah. So, what have we got to talk about today, Nick?
Well, first up, let's talk about the photography competition that we've got going on at the moment. You know, by the time this airs, the deadline would have passed.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So the deadline was on the 30th of June. Yeah. And from the submissions I've seen so far, I mean, we've had more than I think I was expecting
way
far, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. And I'll tell you what, some of them are quality.
It's really
quality photos.
I can already see that being extremely hard to work out who the winner is going to be. That's just, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Like there's some really, there are quite a few really strong images there.
Yeah, there really are. And even those who have, you know, grabbed their iPhone or whatever whatever camera, you know, cheap camera, and they've taken, they're still really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah,
so surprising.
Yeah, it really is. Because you never know. It's the first competition we've run. You know, it may have, I don't know what I was expecting, actually. It may have been no entries.
Could easily have been that, right?
But actually, yeah, no, it was remarkable. So many different images. That's going to be hard.
I can't wait to see who, you know, we ultimately pick as, you know, the winner, and how, quite frankly, how we actually go about judging that as well. You know, it's because they're all very, very different. Very completely different styles. But I'm more excited about getting the person on. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah, because that's some really strong images in there. And it's going to be really interesting to find out how they were done, you know, how they were taken. Because to be honest, with some of those images, I don't even know how you can get that close to an animal. So, you know, and I never know. This is the one thing I never know about wildlife photography is, you know, whether something was taken in a zoo, for example, you know, or in the wild. Especially with close-ups of animals, I find it, you know, I have no idea. Since I'm not a wildlife photographer, I don't really know how, you know, how that really works.
No, but you know, that as an example, you know, they both absolutely have their merits. And at the end of the day, if it's a quality photo of a particular animal, then it's a quality photo of a particular animal. But I have to say, there's something slightly more special if that photo had been captured out in the wild than in a zoo. Because the circumstances that surround taking that photo are just completely different.
Yeah, true. And it's always interesting to discover the circumstances that surround a photograph. I mean, that's what I found really interesting about talking to or listening to photographers talking about their photographs, because it puts context to the actual image. I mean, it's one thing, looking at an image and thinking, okay, well, from a technical perspective or from a compositional perspective, this is really good, or this is, this could be better, or whatever else. But it's the context that you're missing there, because that's what I feel sometimes when I listen to a judge judging a photography competition. That's just for me. I always feel that the context of how that photo was created is sort of missing. And for me, that's a really important part of the experience. So that's why I'm really looking forward to having, the creator of that winning photograph on the podcast, so we can actually have a chat and talk about how whichever photo wins. It'd be interesting to talk about how that was made.
And when are we going to have the winner on? What's our process from now on?
So the next show will come out on the 6th of July. Where are we? June, July? Yeah, 6th of July. That's right. I think that's what it is, isn't it? Yeah. So that's when we'll announce who the winner is. Okay. And obviously we'll be getting in touch with the person beforehand, and we'll have them on the show, I guess. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, why not? Why not? So we'll announce the winner in the next episode, and then we'll have that person on in the following episode.
Something like that.
Cool.
That's good, man. Awesome. Okay, so what else is new in the world of photography?
Let me think. So there's a couple of things I came up with. I noticed or read about the last week or so. One was, we talked a lot actually over the last few weeks here and there about, and we just talked about it a second ago as well, about people taking photos on their iPhones or similar, and how good those photos can actually be these days with the cameras and some of the tech, the software that's behind it. And so I just picked up this article of these wedding photographers who actually, so there were 3 of them in total. 2 of them shot the wedding as normal on their regular cameras.
Were they the same wedding? Or?
Yeah, right. All at the same wedding. So there's a dual kind of photographer setup. And they just shot the wedding as they would always do it. But a third person shot the whole thing on an iPhone. iPhone 11. iPhone 11 Pro, I believe it was, because that's got the additional third camera on it. And so this article, they go into detail about what worked for them, what didn't work so well, and they posted a bunch of photos that they took from it. And I have to say that there's varying levels of quality in them. If you put aside perhaps the editing style for a second, because they're very flat, they're not particularly stylistic. Okay, let's just say that way. But if you look at your typical kind of wedding shots, you got your close-ups of the flowers, the rings, the invitations, the place, whatever it might be, all those typical shots that you expect to see. Then you've got the typical group shots of the bride and her family. Then you've got the bride and groom shots that you'll normally have, and then you've got all the candids that generally happen throughout the course of the day. The close-up shots looked great, looked really, really good. Some of the close-up kind of bride and groom shots worked well, and some of the group photos worked well. But anything that was at more of a distance just I thought that could have been shot on an iPhone 6.
Right,
or,
okay.
It just didn't have that level of quality for me. If you saw the close-up shots and no one told you it was an iPhone shot, you would be hard pushed to go, that's clearly a phone. Some of the other shots, the more close-up ones on people, again, you'd be hard pushed to go, that's definitely a phone.
Yeah.
But the others, you can go, yeah, it's fine, definitely a phone. So what they talk about is the portrait mode on an iPhone. So for those of you who don't own an iPhone and don't have that mode, perhaps I'm not even sure if that is a feature on Android. It must be
probably.
But if it's not, it simply detects a face or the primary object in the photo, and then adds a bokeh in the background.
Okay, so it basically throws the background out of focus digitally, or
yeah, absolutely. And it does it really well. It's a very specific looking type of. Are you a bokeh or a bokeh man?
That's a very good question. I have to really think about that because I think I use both.
Yeah, so do I.
Bokeh, bouquet.
And do you know why I end up changing?
Right.
Is because I think people over in the UK generally say bouquet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Generally. It's how I've noticed it anyway.
Yeah.
But because of most YouTubers and people like that are from America or Canada, they seem to say bokeh a lot more. And so you hear it, and I just interchangeably use them now.
Yeah, I'm saying is I'm never really sure. I don't think it's originally a Japanese word.
Is that right?
Yeah, apparently so. Probably.
You sure that wasn't bonsai?
Probably. I kill you with my lens.
Some fast anime action going.
Do you remember that game was it called Worms?
Yeah.
With the suicidal worms. Do you remember that game?
Oh, that's right.
Do you remember
that one? God, yeah, from the early 90s.
Yeah. Loved it.
Good game.
Wicked game.
Good game. PC game, right?
Yeah. You know, I got... Well, I've had Apple TV for a long time, right? And so we got at the beginning of lockdown, we signed up to Apple Arcade, which is basically the kind of games platform on Apple TV.
Okay,
and it's just because mainly because the games seem to be the right kind of games for my 8-year-old or now 9-year-old sort of age group, right? So my 9-year-old daughter love to play those games. So they're really the perfect games for her to play. And so some of them are quite cute. Some of them are quite skillful, but they're not like they're not Call of Duty. Let's put it this way, right? So it seemed like the right fit. And she enjoys some of the games. But Worms is the one game I want to see on that. Now, just thinking about it, that would fit perfectly.
Oh,
into
nice.
That. Yeah.
Oh, you made me want to play it again now.
The only thing I was thinking the other day, and I'm not really very big into computer games, just generally, but I love playing Star Wars games. So Battlefront, what is it? Battlefront 2 or something. Yeah. That was the one I was thinking the other day. Like, that'd be very cool.
We're clearly both Star Wars fans.
Well,
yeah.
How would you ever tell?
Yeah. Hyper geeks. Yes.
Yeah. Incidentally, also, we're very, very close to Pinewood Studios, where we are here. So
true.
That is where Star Wars was filmed. Recently, Elstree Studios was the first one, I think, originally. That's also not far away. But Pinewood is really just a stone's throw away.
It's it's probably a 10-minute drive from here, roughly.
Yeah. So very, very close to the source.
Do you know we're completely sidetracking at the moment, but do you know I had a gig at Pinewood Studios once.
Oh yeah, okay.
Years ago, and because they hire out particular areas, particular rooms for weddings and those private type functions, and so I had a gig there, and we took a little wander, just before we started or at halftime, I forget now. And we just wandered into this room, started seeing all these old kind of artifacts and whatnot, props and things from films. Had the golden gun from Man with a Golden Gun.
Oh, yeah.
The Superman outfit, I think, was there as well. And a whole host of things like that. Yeah. Snapping a few photos and whatnot. Within about a minute, security arrived.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, we're going to have to delete those photos.
Man. Oh, no.
Can you believe it? Oh, no.
That's terrible. It's. I live on the other side of Pinewood Studios, so probably same sort of distance, but on the other side. And so what happens is a lot of people that work at Pinewood go to my gym, and when I go to the gym, when I used to go to the gym when they were still open, I like my kind of superhero T-shirt, if you know what I mean. And you wouldn't believe how many times I'd walk in with like an Avengers T-shirt or something. There'd be somebody in the gym going, "Hey, were you in the movie? Were you in that production? I worked on that too." And I'm like, "Really? Yeah, I'm a carpenter or whatever, whatever it is." Yeah. So yeah, it's really it's quite remarkable how many people around this area are kind of working at Pinewood or somehow linked to the movies the movie industry.
Well, I mean, everything was made there, right? And still is. It's a massive area too.
Yeah.
It's people don't realize how big Pinewood Studios is, because
Yeah.
it takes up a whole area of the parks that are around as well.
Interesting enough, there used to be there's another place called Denham, which is not too far, and there used to be big movie studio lot there, which has in recent years been converted into luxury flats.
Okay.
But they kept the whole kind of appeal. It's all like, it's like Stanley Kubrick Road, and all the roads are named after like famous directors and everything. I think the whole the apartment complex has its own cinema, which I think is very cool. So slightly outside of my price range.
Oh yeah.
But I think it would be cool.
Yeah.
To live around there. So,
do you know Pinewood also has a cinema that you can go to and watch?
Oh really?
Watch films that they've been involved with, and they screen them like you would just go to the regular cinema during release. It's also the last Star Wars film there.
Oh really?
Yeah,
nice.
And they do. So it's the same room they do viewings for whoever's part of the film. Show this is where we're at and that kind of thing. So you've got all the Pro Tools desk in the middle where they do the sound and all that kind of stuff. Very cool. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, where I grew up in the south of Germany, there's in the sort of the next town there's a famous film academy, and what they do in the summer. This is in the south of Germany. The weather is usually good and it's kind of hot, but in the summer they do an outdoor cinema where they have a little square in the middle of the whole complex, like a sort of cobble, square, and they set out like garden chairs, and then they project. As soon as the sun comes down, they project the movie onto like the wall of a building, and you just turn up. You bring your own wine or whatever, and you just chill out, watch a movie. Awesome,
cool,
yeah. Projected onto the side of a building.
Yeah, nice,
fun.
It's fun. My band's toying with the idea of doing a street concert. And,
really?
It might happen, it might not, but we're seriously considering it. Just out on the road, so people can still distance themselves while this is still all going on. But sure. Hopefully have a bit of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
What were we talking about?
I can't remember.
iPhone. Yeah. And so, so some of the shots look great. Some don't look good to me at all. And perhaps they're edited in the way that they've been edited because you can't get the depth out of them that you actually want to get out of them.
Yeah.
So you're shooting in RAW, you get what you're going to get. I'm guessing these were all JPEGs. They must have been. I don't think iPhone Pros can do RAW.
Well, they can. It depends on the app. So you can shoot RAW on iPhone when you shoot directly in Lightroom, for example.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you can do that. I have used that. I just have to say that in terms of these RAW files, although they're RAW files, they're sort of somewhat more brittle than, let's say, DNG files from Nikon. So they don't really give you the range that you would have on a DSLR,
sure,
or on a mirrorless camera.
Sure.
So they're not quite. Technically they're RAW files, but they're not quite as good.
Yeah.
But maybe it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. I think especially if you're shooting with your iPhone and you're shooting straight in Lightroom, for example, and then you edit it in Lightroom, that can be an advantage. Although, for all intents and purposes, what I tend to do is I just shoot JPEG and then edit that in Lightroom on my phone. If it's like a quick on the go kind of edit, it works perfectly fine. No problem at all. And the other thing, of course, that happens is when I transfer a photo from my Nikon onto my phone, it actually transfers the JPEG. So whatever I edit in Lightroom then will be natively a JPEG anyway. Although I never shoot JPEGs on my DSLR ever, because I don't really see what the point is. But
no.
So I don't necessarily feel that shooting RAW is always necessary. But I mean, most of the time you just have more flexibility when it comes to to editing. So
sure.
But I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not in the camp of people who say like you always have to shoot in RAW, because that's also not it's not really necessary.
For sure.
No.
What else was there to mention about what they were doing in the iPhone there? Other than how they look, it's worth check them out and see what the photos actually look like. I guess the only other thing worth mentioning is that they use the 2 times sort of optical zoom that it's got in there. I guess it's just one of the lenses, so I'm not sure, but because that's equivalent to 52 mil.
Okay.
It would be equivalent to a 52 mil lens, so to speak, full frame. So that's why they use that, because they're used to obviously that focal length when they're actually shooting in their DSLRs.
Well, that's a good 50 mil is a good focal length, obviously, because 50 mil is generally thought to be the kind of focal length that best represents what we as humans see. So our sort of field of view is approximately 50 mil. So 50 mil is a really kind of a natural looking kind of focal range. It also, I like 50 mil because it doesn't really distort very much. So things tend to look very natural.
Yeah.
When you use that, especially like as a prime lens.
Yeah.
And you can pick up 50 mil prime lenses relatively cheaply. Nikon and Canon do like 1.8 50 mil nifty 50s. A few £100. You're in with a really good prime lens.
It's exactly what I used on last week's selfie challenge.
Oh, okay.
I used my 50 on that.
Oh. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it depends. I like 50s for like 1 person 3/4 to full length portraits. I actually like 50 mil for that. Anything closer than that, I do prefer an 85.
Yeah,
that's sort of that's sort of my go-to lens when it comes to that kind of portraiture. And the other thing that I find, for instance, when I do headshots, is I tend to start out with this sort of stereotypical 70 to 200, the 180 to 200 mil range. So you have a long lens to get a very like a headshot. Essentially, what it tends to do is it tends to compress the image, and it tends to kind of blow out the background really quite nicely. So you get a really soft background. And then halfway through the session, I switch over to the 85, and I guarantee you 9 out of 10 images that make it into the final selection will be done with the 85.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed over the last couple of years. Or something that's definitely.
Have you tried for pure interest? Because as models relax for a shoot, perhaps some of the later photos would be better shots from compositional perspective anyway. Have you tried doing your lenses the other way around, so starting on your 85 and moving to the...
it's not so much the model relaxing. I mean, it's fair to say that especially when you work with regular people who are not necessarily used to being in front of the lens, you can probably say that the first 60 70 shots are just warm-up shots. I don't expect to actually have any of those in the final selection. It's just we're just going to go through a number of different things, and people start to relax. We're having a chat, and everything's groovy after that. And then you find your topics of conversation, and everybody kind of eases up a little bit. And that's when the best photos start to happen. There are always exceptions, because you might have a really good shot early on, but generally speaking, after about 60, 70 shots, that's when you kind of get to the meat of it, essentially. I think I just like the look of the 85 better. That's just something, I don't know, it's just something different about it. Yeah. Just the way the effect that a focal length has on your facial features, maybe that's what it is.
It'd be really interesting to do our own kind of test at some point, just on what an 85 looks like. 2.8, whether all the settings are the same, and seeing how 200 mil is different to 18 mil, whatever it might be.
Absolutely, that'd be super easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting as a portrait photographer. I sort of know what the effect is of different focal lengths and different lenses on the way, especially facial features are displayed. And I'd say you make a conscious decision sometimes, depending on somebody's kind of head shape and how heavy they are, and what sort of body composition they have, sort of thing. You kind of you can make somebody look more favorable with a particular kind of focal length. Let's put it this way. So and I always, for my taste, and this is like really, I think, partially is where it comes down to your personal taste as a photographer. But for my taste, I tend to gravitate back to the 85. And I know a lot of people like 100 millimeters as a portrait lens. And I can see why. I mean, that's not that far off an 85. So I can kind of see that. Also, the other thing I like is when you shoot with an 85, by default, you're going to be much closer to your model. So that's a big thing. So with the 200, with the 70-200, because you have to shoot at anywhere between 120 and 200 mil to get that kind of compression effect. So by default, you're going to be fairly far away from your model. So if you're shooting a headshot, you're probably a good, I don't know, like 5 meters away.
Yeah.
And it makes communicating with that person much more difficult. That's what I find. Yeah. Because you're literally almost like you're shouting across. And so that's why I like to start with a 70-200, because by the time you're kind of warmed up, you can then switch to the 85, and then you're going to be much closer to the person that you're photographing, and you've already built up that relationship. So it's not as it's not going to feel as in your face because you've already kind of got to know each other, and you've had a chat already, and things are a little bit more relaxed. So that's kind of why I do it that way around. And I've just found that works well for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But I'd love to do a test.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It'd be quite interesting to do, and just really see how those drop off, and particularly how 85 mil prime versus setting your telephoto to 85. If there's actually any difference in how they look as well. Same brand, I bet there's some difference there, but whether it's that noticeable, we'll see.
Well, I think what I find, for instance, just if I compare the 70-200 and my 85 prime, if I shoot the 70-200, which is a zoom lens, obviously, if I set that to 85 mil and I compare that directly to just my 85 prime lens, I can see a marked difference in the sharpness and the clarity of the image. And I put that down to the fact that that in a zoom lens you have a lot more glass elements in there. So the light has to travel through these glass elements, and the barrel shifts inside and everything else. So in a prime lens, it's a much simpler lens in many ways, and so the light doesn't have to travel through so many glass elements, and therefore that's why prime lenses are so much sharper generally. They're so much more like they have more of a kick. That's how I would describe it. Like the images pop more, and that's why a lot of photographers swear by them. I know a lot of photographers who, especially, when we were talking to Abu Shah last time, I remember, he told us that he is a prime lens wedding shooter, and I've heard that many times. And I can see the reasoning behind that. And I just, because I remember I was talking to him and I was thinking how I approach an event, like when I shoot a conference, for example. And I like to I shoot a lot with a 24-70. And then I also use the 70-200 quite a lot. And I like the fact that I have the ability to zoom because in a conference, especially when you're photographing, a keynote speaker, and then you get shots of the audience, you're not as flexible in how you can move. You're very limited in how close you can get and the angles that you can get, because of, you have seating in the middle, and you have a keynote speaker who's in one particular place usually. So you need to be able to zoom in, especially if you want to get some detail, kind of close-up kind of shots, because you just can't get close enough to your subject under those conditions. So I think the pros and cons. A wedding, I'm guessing, is very different because you have more of a chance to get close to the bride, and so I can see I can see the point. Yeah. In actual fact, when I first started in photography, I had this thing in my head that I was only going to shoot prime lenses.
Really?
Yeah.
What changed? Why? Just flexibility?
No, I mean, I think I remember when I first got my first camera with a kit lens, that kit lens wasn't particularly good. No. And when I then upgraded to a nifty 50, the difference was remarkable. And I kind of thought, why would anybody bother with a zoom lens? It's such a massive difference. And so I shot the 50mm for a good few years, a couple of years or something. And then I started shooting. Yeah, and I shot my first concert just with the 50mm prime lens. And just doing that, I realized that actually, having the ability to change your focal length and to zoom in and out in a concert situation is actually really useful because, again, you're limited in where you can be when you shoot a band. You can be in front of the stage, you can be on the side of the stage, but you can't exactly really walk onto the stage. And so if you want to get some really, cool close-up shots, you need to get closer.
Yeah.
So, and of course, people move all the time, lights change, you've got an audience there pushing in or whatever. So it's a lot more, it's a lot more useful to have the ability to zoom. But under those conditions, your regular kit lens isn't going to hold up. So that's the point. I mean, that was the point for me where, I started thinking, well, okay, if I want to take this anywhere, I'm going to have to invest into some pro glass.
Yeah.
And that's really, that's how I ended up getting into sort of the holy trinity of pro glass, as it were. And then these are real workhorses for me. Like these lenses are, I think we talked about pro glass in the past, but those lenses they're indestructible. You can literally go to war with them. You have a tank run over them, they're still going to be fine. They are solid producers of good imagery. And so they're just really practical pieces of kit, I think. That's not to say that I wouldn't be happy with a assorted range of superb prime glass. So yeah, but yeah, we should definitely do a comparison. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah. It's, I'm sure we've got enough between us to test a few things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we should do something like 35, 50, 85, 100, or 105 or something like that. They'll do it and then compare it to the equivalent in zoom lenses, essentially, and see what the result would be.
Consider it done.
Oh, awesome.
Consider it done.
Next project.
So, what else have you come across this week? Anything in particular?
So Canon announced the R5 and the R6, and although some of the R6 specs are kind of not 100% certain, like there's a lot of rumor going around, but I think we're getting to the point where we pretty much know what range these specs are going to fall in. And as always with Canon, I found the way that they equip their camera models really quite interesting, because sometimes I just don't necessarily follow the logic. They're both really good cameras, by the way. I mean, that's the one thing I noticed. It's like, this isn't like, some years ago where you could definitely say like, this is a semi-pro model or an amateur camera or something like that. And that's a definite pro camera. Both of these cameras are phenomenal cameras. And I really do think, and I know a lot of people agree, that there isn't really a bad camera around these days.
Sure.
So the R5, when that was announced, that was quite this game changer, because that was announced with like 8K video.
Yeah.
4K up to 120 frames per second. That is, outstanding, really. But 8K video, that seems like total mega monster overkill.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before. Why would you shoot in 8K? Like, why would you?
Well, editing reasons only, really, right now. For me, anyway. So you can zoom in by 50% and still get 4K out of it.
But like 8K, the file sizes must be like astronomical, right?
Yet to use it. So, but yeah, it's disgraceful.
Yeah, because that's because that's always the thing. Like, 8K sounds good until you think like, oh, now I've got to replace my computer because my processing power isn't up to it, and I need to buy more hard drive space because the files are so large. And then you think that's the cost side, and you think of the benefit side. And you're like, what am I getting for it? Okay, I can zoom in. Right. Okay. And then, of course, the question is whether that's worth it, or not.
Hopefully, by the time that 8K is really relevant, and everywhere can play back 8K and in full 8K, that the cost of everything else would have come down.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
You know, how long ago did 4K come out? And still we consume the majority of content in 1080.
Oh, I know. And 4K is available years.
I
couldn't even tell you right now.
Exactly. That's that's the thing. So I can just imagine it's going to take like a decade until we're all happily watching 4K.
Yeah.
And I also wonder, like, how much resolution is really necessary when you watch something, let's say on TV, for example? Because I always feel like when I watch something on a 4K television, that is very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I see more than I want to see.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when it comes to TV programs, I would say. It's like, you look at that and you kind of go, I thought she looked better than that. You know, you can see like the makeup and, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Do you know when I know exactly when I first noticed that as well, but like properly, because there's a particular point in The Big Bang Theory where they switched from filming in 1080.
Oh, really? Okay.
To 4K, or they filmed in 4K and their final output was in 1080, ready for streaming.
I see.
Or they've then switched to their output being in 4K as well, which kind of I think probably makes most sense. And there's a distinct difference in how they look, and it is horrible.
Oh, right. Okay.
I hate it. I can barely watch it.
Yeah.
Because it looks hyper real.
Yeah.
You know, we've used that phrase a lot for various things, and it does look hyper real, and I don't like looking at it.
I don't really like watching sports in 4K. That's what I've noticed. Is that when you watch let's say a football match or something. Not that I watch a lot of football, but on the rare occasion that I see a football match on TV in 4K, especially on like a massive TV, where you kind of feel like almost like you're on the pitch.
Yeah,
but it all looks really unreal.
Yeah, it's very rare that I see a match in 4K. I think BT Sport will do there's a 4K channel, and is that true 4K coming through? Who knows? But yeah, I will still use it if it's on, rather than the regular HD version, because you just do, right?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's also hyper real, and I'm not all that keen on it.
Yeah,
it's a big difference. I do think there's a big difference between seeing a film style video in 4K and television in 4K. Yeah. You expect television to look a certain way, and this might be a bit of us getting used to things and adapting over the next few years. And I'm sure we will. Yeah. But right now, it doesn't work for me personally.
See, I'm old enough to remember when video meant like videotapes. VHS. Yeah. And then I remember that switch over to DVD, and that's only like 720, really, isn't it? So I remember that switch over to DVD and thinking, oh my God, that looks amazing, right? Incredible. Now, I watch a movie on DVD and I immediately go, that looks terrible, man.
I can't watch DVDs anymore.
It's just like the resolution's terrible, in comparison to the same movie in 1080.
Yeah.
So I haven't made that step to 4K in my head. No. It's because I really feel that it's gone past to looking better. But I mean, for me, it's gone past looking better. It just looks weird. Yeah. And this, this is too much detail.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
So 8K videos, there might be some good reason as to why you want to use that.
There's some benefit. If I were to own that, would I actually shoot in 8K? For a short while, for fun, I think more than anything else, to see what it can do, really stretch it. Would I regularly shoot in that? No, I don't think I would, if I'm honest.
Yeah. So I mean, the R5 anyway gives you the option of shooting 8K video on it, which is cool, and the 4K up to 120. So that's 120 frames per second. The great advantage there is that you have you can shoot some really detailed slow-mo.
That's super interesting to me.
So that is because technically, normally what would have happened, or what has happened so far, is that even if you had a camera that managed to shoot in 4K, it wouldn't allow you to shoot at those frame rates. So typically, what would happen is, like, let's say your camera shoots in 4K at 24 frames per second, which is the standard frame rate, or maybe up to 30 frames per second, but 120 frames per second, that would basically then downscale to like 1080.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly.
And so if you wanted to include a lot of really nice, really smooth slow-mo in your video, then you would by default have to really do everything in 1080. Or at least shoot the rest of it in 4K and then downsample it in 1080, which there's also an advantage to that. But anyway, so the R5 allows you to do 4K up to 120. Great. It shoots at 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter and 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, which I think is actually cool. You know, if you're a sports shooter, for example, 20 frames.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Awesome. Right? Great. Or like wildlife, you know, shoot at birds flying in midair or something. Sounds good. But it also, I mean, this is where it gets really interesting for videographers, is that it has full in-body stabilization. So you marry that up with the 4K 120 and full body stabilization, you can get some super smooth B-roll going on there, like slow-mo. So the next thing that really caught my attention was the eternal argument about card slots. So when Canon and Nikon came up with their first generation of mirrorless cameras, they were heavily criticized for the fact that they only had one card slot.
Yeah.
So now the R5 and the R6 are both going to have 2 card slots to put everyone else at peace.
Yeah,
right?
Finally.
That's it. You know, trust can be reinstated. You know, the heavens have listened, whatever. I mean, the whole thing about card slots, I think we touched about this last week. We touched on this last week. You know, it's one of these things. I can understand the argument, like when you're used to having 2 card slots and you're used to having that sort of safety net, you know, then why would you give that up?
Yeah.
You know, I totally get it. The reality is, and this is like the eternal argument, that not too long ago, all cameras used to have 1 card slot.
Yeah.
In fact, not too long before that, all cameras had 1 roll of film. So the R5 has 2 card slots, right? One of them is a CF Express card slot.
Yep.
And the other one is just, you know, it's an SD card slot essentially. I bet you that if you want to, you know, shoot 8K video, that definitely, I guarantee you that's going to go straight to the CF Express.
No question.
The problem with CF Express is it's just really expensive.
Yeah.
You know, so you're going to spend another couple of £100 or something on memory cards on top of. Yeah, well, that is exactly it. On top of the camera. So that camera is going to be around the sort of £3,500 mark, right? Then throw in another couple of £100 for CF Express cards. You're at 3.7.
Ka-ching.
Ka-ching, yeah, exactly. So it's you know, it's not cheap, but it's a 44 megapixel camera.
Wow. Okay.
So high resolution can come in handy. And you know, the other question there is whether you really need a 44 megapixel camera. Again, I mean, it's a little bit like the dual card slot argument. On one hand, you would say, well, great, the more resolution, the better. On the other hand, you know, I heard somebody say the other day, like, nobody needs that kind of resolution because nobody actually has that kind of resolution. So I think as a portrait photographer, you know, or doing portraits in studio, for example, I think, you know, that extra resolution can give you a hell of a lot of detail. So that could actually be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can crop in more, not too dissimilar to video.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, I think as a portrait photographer could come in handy. I think as a wedding photographer could come in handy, or as an event photographer, because again, you can kind of crop in and you can really sort of hone in on particular parts of your image, especially with events and weddings. I think that could potentially be really useful. So yeah, I can see that working. As a sports photographer, that's not going to work for you because you're just not going to be able to. Well, or does it? I don't know. What do you people think? You can always send us an email or call in and let us know what you think. If you're shooting sports, how do you feel about the 44 megapixels or even 50 or 60 megapixel cameras? Does that make sense to you or not? I'd be interested to know. So get in touch. So now the R6 is the other new model that Canon have announced.
I'm assuming that the specs are going to be even higher because it's an R6.
Well, that's what I thought, but it's not really the case.
Of course not.
So this is where
Why would it?
Exactly. I mean, this is where I get confused with Canon. And I really do. I just don't really get it. But anyway, again, if anybody can enlighten me when it comes to like Canon models, and it's just, I don't know, it's beyond me. Anyway, so the R6 though is still a really interesting camera, because so just bear in mind the R6 comes in at $3,500. The R6, so the R5 comes in at $3,500. The R6 comes in at £1,000 less than that.
That's a significant difference.
Yes, a significant difference. However, get this. So the video specs are still really interesting, I think, because although it doesn't give you the 8K, it shoots in 4K. However, it actually shoots in 5K oversampled. Okay. So that means you shoot in 5K, the end result is going to be in 4K, but because you're shooting in a higher resolution, you get more sharpness and probably richer colors or whatever. So it'll look better than just shooting in 4K. Mm-hmm. That is, as I understand it, similar to shooting in 4K and then basically delivering in 1080. Isn't that right? I mean, that's...
Well, the idea, I guess, is the same. Whether the quality difference is, the difference between shooting in 1080 and then shooting in 4K down sample to 1080, there's a quality difference of X. Yeah. I doubt that same quality difference will be there when you're just shooting in 5 down to 4. Right. It seems hard to believe, but there will be an extra level of detail. Okay, for sure.
Cool. I mean, so that basically gives you a better image than it would ordinarily be.
In theory, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. That said, though, not all 4K looks the same either. Yeah. It's we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to see the quality before I really judge.
But still, 4K video up to or 5K video if you want, up to 60 frames per second. So that's still not bad. You're still getting, I guess 120. There's probably going to be 120 frames per second in 1080. That's sort of what we're kind of used to these days. In terms of frame rates, it's the same. It still shoots 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter and 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter. That's pretty lightning fast. Yeah. So that's sounding pretty good. And it also has full body stabilization, or full in-body stabilization. Again, very cool for smooth video shots.
The R5's got that as well, right? Yeah.
Now the R6 comes with 2 SD card slots. So that kind of immediately makes it attractive to me, I think, because it means you can just keep using your already existing SD cards. So that's kind of cool. You don't have to spend any extra money on CFX cards, because really, when you do the price comparison, you get to factor that in. So really, we're not talking $3,500 versus $2,500. We're really talking 3,700 versus $2,500. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So far, I'm hearing overall it's going to be about £1,200 cheaper, and all I've lost so far is the ability to shoot in 8K. So instead, I shoot in 5K. Yeah, that's the only real difference I'm hearing so far.
Yeah, so far, but there are a couple more differences. Okay. So one of the things with the R6 is that it loses the top-down display. So when the little LCD display, when you look down on your camera, you've got all the settings in there. So I think the question there is whether you can live without that or not. And I remember when I first went into full frame, and when I got my first camera that had a sort of top display, and I really liked it, and I started using it a lot, and I don't really know that I use it that much. I obviously use it, but I'm not too sure whether that would be a deal breaker for me.
I don't think it would be for me. I've got so used to shooting on the GH5 that doesn't have a top-down display.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so I'm used to shooting video. I'm always going to have the back screen on. Oh, that's right. But if I'm doing photos, I won't use. Occasionally, I'll use the back screen, but very rare. I'll still shoot through the EVF, and all the information I need's in there.
Talking about the EVF, actually, this is the one thing I found really remarkable about the R6 is that it's actually the RVF. That's got a 5 million dot EVF, and from what I've read, it's supposed to be super beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like super high res, like super awesome, top of the range kind of EVF. at that price point, I think that could swing me that way.
That's cool. And the R5 doesn't have that.
I don't know is the answer to
Okay.
that. I would have guessed that probably. I don't really see a reason why I wouldn't use the same EVF.
No.
Especially because you've got, and here we come to one of the major differences between those two models. So remember, the R5 comes in at 44 megapixels.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, you kind of think, if you want a really high resolution EVF, if you're shooting in that resolution, right? No brainer. So the R6, and Canon hasn't really released the actual information about this, but it sounds like it's going to be around the 20 megapixel mark.
That's a massive difference.
Yep. So that is like, so far I read down the spec list of the R6 and thinking, yeah, that sounds really good. Oh, quite awesome. And then I get to the 20 megapixel.
It feels like this feels far more right. So both are clearly geared towards video as well. Yeah. This feels now with the smaller sensor that it is video. It's less. It's got less appeal for a photographer now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's
not exclusively. There's nothing wrong with 20 megapixel sensor, but I think people have got so used to having a larger sensor than that for photography that suddenly that's.
I mean, I think as my main studio camera shoots at 24 or 25 megapixels, and that is, for all intents and purposes, that's really all I need. I've never really thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a higher resolution sensor or something like that. That's until you try out a camera that is in the 30, 40, 50 megapixel range, and you really then start to see the difference. Especially if you're working on like a high resolution monitor or something like that, you can really, it does make a big difference. So if I were thinking about replacing my current camera, I'd be in the market for something that's slightly higher in resolution. I would definitely, 30 megapixels. Yeah, I would, not have a problem with that. 44 would probably be sort of the limit for me.
Yeah.
The kind of balance between, file size and usability, but going backwards to 20, that's not really, I don't think I'd be up for that.
No.
So that is quite disappointing. And 20 megapixels is, again, Canon haven't really released the final answer to that. So it could very well be that it's somewhere in this 20 to 26 megapixel range. If it came in at 26, yeah, great.
Yeah. It's an odd one if it does come in at, when do we know when we're expecting
them
to
I'm guessing probably within the next, I don't know. I'm totally guessing now, but I'm thinking probably within the next month or so.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many specs have come out already, and it's just, I think it's a matter of weeks probably until they realize.
It's like getting the iPhone 12 specs being rumored for ages. Oh, speaking of which, relevant to what you just said, apparently a new iPhone 12 is going to have 4K 120.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like native, it's going to be, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I said this last time, I'm really surprised when it comes to the way video looks on the iPhone 11 Pro. I've seen a number of YouTubers using that as their main camera, and I've been really surprised how good that looks.
Yeah.
That could potentially be a real game changer. If you think about what happens, when you're shooting video for YouTube, for example, you got to go through the whole kerfuffle of, setting up a camera. Usually you need a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. If you don't have a flip screen, you need an extra screen. You need a microphone, blah, 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 blah. It's a lot of kerfuffle for, just to record a video that looks really high quality. And what I've seen from the iPhone 11 Pro, it looks great. for that kind of application. We're not talking about shooting like movies or anything, but so yeah, that could come in handy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, a slight sidetrack there.
Yeah.
So the R5, R6, I don't know. Part of me says, let's just assume it has got a 20 megapixel sensor right now. My GH5 is 20, GH5S. I'm pretty sure it's 20. And I struggle at times with photos on it. I don't quite get the detail in it that I want. I can't quite blow it up to the level that I want to blow it up to, but good enough given that I primarily use it for video. I'd be tempted by the R6 over the R5 given the huge price difference. I'm not all that interested in 8K at the minute, I have to say. 4K is plenty and will be for the length of time that I would have this new camera body for. Then I might consider, 8K may now be useful, in several years.
Yeah.
Until then, I don't need it.
Because I remember not too long ago we had this conversation about, because you were saying you were kind of starting to think about maybe changing system,
Yeah.
And we're discussing, where to go from Panasonic.
Yeah.
So do you think like with the R6, would that be a camera you would consider if you were to change systems?
I'm not sure that I would at the moment, if I'm honest, because I'm not getting much more right now. Everything you've really described about the R6, give or take, is pretty much what the GH5S has.
Okay.
Similar megapixel size. The quality, the 4K quality on that is fantastic. Yes, the R6 might be a notch sharper, given that it's doing it in 5K and down. That's not a reason enough to change for me. The EVF is a nice touch, but I don't have an issue with the EVF on mine right now. It's great. It's really cool.
I mean, the one thing I haven't really mentioned is the autofocus.
Yeah, all right.
So, let's just assume for a second. I'm sure there's going to be an improvement on the sort of dual pixel autofocus, whatever, or eye detect or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Compared to the previous model, compared to the RP. But even, by the way, even the RP comes in at 30 megapixels. So I'm like that. I'm still kind of questioning that whole 20 megapixel scenario.
Maybe it's wrong. Hopefully it's wrong. Or actually, there's an incredibly good reason why they've gone for that, and it better not just be price.
Well, I mean, it may be price. Maybe that's that's the kind of money you can save by putting a lower res sensor in there. I don't know. Maybe the reason. But yeah, so. Even if the R6 came equipped with, the sort of standard Canon dual pixel autofocus, which we know is really, really great. Okay, so would that sway you towards Canon? Or?
Not for the price right now. So just to give you a price comparison, the body for the GH5S is, or was at least, in the £1,500 range.
Okay.
Yes, it's micro four thirds. And obviously the R6 is full frame. So to have, what was it? That'd be £1,000 more for a new body,
$2,500,
just to get slightly better focusing, significantly better focusing, and not a lot else. And then have to change lenses and all of that. It doesn't feel worth it for me at the moment. Yeah. I think I need a bit more to warrant making that jump.
Yeah, it's just, because I mean, to be fair, we shoot all of this on a GH5 or GH5S, and I have to say, I mean, I really can't fault that image. It looks really good. So, it's always, I think this is this thing where all of a sudden incremental improvements in image quality or something really start to become really expensive.
Yeah.
And then the question is, how good is good enough?
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
And, and that's going to hit you with, like, if you compare the GH5 to the R6, that's £1,000.
Yeah. Plus God knows what on lenses.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you're already a Canon shooter, however,
different story.
Maybe it's worth considering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting offering there, Canon.
Yeah. I can't wait to see the final specs for the 6.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to follow that.
So I don't know if you read about this guy called Reuben Pillay. Hope I pronounced that correctly. He lives in Mauritius, and apparently Google have never been there to do their street view.
Oh, really?
Something like that, which is bizarre. I'm pretty sure they've covered every inch of this planet.
So like the white bit on the map,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so he, 18 months ago, he decided that, okay, well, if Google aren't going to come here, I'm going to basically do it for them. And so he spent the last 18 months taking high-res photos with his drone. In fact, I think it's the same drone you own.
Was it Mavic Air?
Yeah, pretty sure it was.
Nice.
And he's taking high-res photos with that drone of the entire coastline of Mauritius.
So as we all know, of course, Mauritius has a coastline of about 110 miles.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah, I didn't just look that up.
No.
Anyway,
Oh, no.
Not at all.
No. Okay. Which is, as islands go, it's pretty small. But to go around and in various spots take multiple photos, every spot had a 360 photo.
Oh, really?
Effectively. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so he took multiple photos in that spot, and then what he's done is he's gone back, he's edited them, stitched them together to create a 360 photo, effectively. And each photo took about 10 hours, I think he said, to edit and stitch.
Couldn't you have just flown the drone like really high and then take one top-down picture of the island?
Maybe.
That would have been so much easier.
Yeah,
Nobody told him
that.
Yeah. No, damn it! Could have been so easy.
It would have been amazing. Absolutely amazing. But it's quite something to do that. Can you imagine doing that? And 10 hours of editing.
So he did that because Google never did any street view photography on the island itself.
Yep.
And then he just thought I'll just do it myself.
Give himself a project.
Oh, okay.
Which is cool. And, doing over 18 months, with that amount of editing time, the 10 hours or so for each one, that's a significant project to take on. There's more though.
Right.
So he needed a way to show people this. And so he built himself a website too. And he's never built a website before. But what he's built is really cool because you can click on a location on the map and it will take you down to that that photo, and you can move yourself around. You can see the other photo locations within that photo as well, so you can just click ahead, a bit like on Google Street View where you can click ahead down the road and it takes you down to those pictures there. And so he did that as well. So not having ever done that before, he was also doing kind of 20-hour website building sessions too.
Right.
This is commitment, if ever I've heard it. And the website's great.
But here's the thing, though. Mauritius is mainly beach, isn't it?
Let's go with yes.
So, so it's basically 110 miles of beach.
Yeah.
So he could have just taken 1 or 2 photos and then just stitched them together.
Same thing, right?
Yeah. Wow.
How ignorant.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but that's kind of cool. So has Google integrated that into their own street?
No, you can just go to his website to check it out. And I think part of his idea is that perhaps it will help bring in a bit of tourism and whatnot, and who knows.
Well,
it's a nice thing to be able to see.
I might just do that. I might just check out that website, given that we're not going on holiday this summer.
Absolutely. So the website to actually check it out on is reubsvision.mu. REUBS vision.mu.
Cool.
It's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Worth checking out.
Awesome. I might do the same thing off Brickmansworth.
That'll be...
Just fly the drone. No. Maybe not. That might get me into trouble, I think.
Definitely.
Cool. Okay, so I guess the last thing we're going to just mention one more time is the monthly photo challenge. It's animals and pets this time. So if you are an avid animal photographer, or you've taken some really awesome shots of your pet or any other animal for that matter, then just get in touch. Send us your photos in. The email address is camerashakepodcast@gmail.com. Or you can message us on Facebook. same sort of deal, facebook.com/Camera Shake podcast. Just get in touch and we'll have a look through the shots. We've mentioned it before, the winning photo, or the photographer, the maker of the winning photo, will hopefully be with us on the podcast once we've announced the winner. So that should be really cool. Be interesting to talk to whoever wins. And so that's our new monthly photo challenge. We're going to be doing this every month, and we're going to think of a new topic or new subject every month. So I don't know what next month's challenge is going to be all about, but we're going to announce that next week. So now we still, of course, going to continue with our weekly photo challenge.
Indeed.
And since this is the week of togetherness, we've decided to change things around a little bit. Because what are we going to do this week, Nick?
Well, this time we're going to look at trying to do a joint photo. And what we mean by that is you're going to be, well, see, we talk about togetherness with this, but actually we're going to be apart.
Yeah, true.
So the idea here will be that Kersten will direct me from his home, and I will take the photo from my home. You know, we'll chat over the phone, over Zoom, and whatever we need to do to communicate. But Kersten will be able to control my camera or see the live view of my camera. I'll adjust the settings I need to. And he'll also control what I do in that photo, whatever the topic will end up being, from lighting to composition. And we're going to try and do it completely remotely and see what we end up with. We may or may not even go through the editing process remotely as well.
That's true.
That might be a bit harder, but we'll see.
Yeah, that should be interesting. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And who knows, if we are, in it for a second wave, all of this might come in handy.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
Absolutely. I've never done anything like that before. Who knows what hurdles we're going to run into? Probably many.
But then also, we've never done a podcast before. The first wave hit. So you never stop learning, I guess.
This is true.
It's just another challenge.
Yeah, and we've learned plenty today as well.
That's why it's a challenge.
Yeah. How not to put a mirror up.
Yeah, just watch the outtakes. Cool. Well, that's it for today. You've been listening and hopefully viewing the Camera Shake podcast, episode 10, here on the podcast. Or if you're viewing it, of course, we're on YouTube. So if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, then head over to YouTube so you can not only hear our super smooth voices, but you can also see us in full and glorious Technicolor. If you feel so inclined, please subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you like. We're on Facebook. Come and join us there. There's always stuff going on. So if you want to have a look behind the scenes, then you can join us on the Book of Face. Until next time, without further ado, see you next week, every Thursday.